let me just record. So is everyone in New York time zone?
Yep.
Yeah.
Nope.
Where are you, Alicia?
West Coast, Seattle.
Okay, that's well, I'm in India, so it's like 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m. here. So it's middle of the night for me. But
Oh my God, dedication.
yeah, I'm gonna power through. Why don't we just go around and introduce ourselves, so everyone who's here, you know, they can get to know you. So I don't mind going first. Hi everyone, I'm Oishika. I'm a computer science major here at CAS, and also the president of ACM. Um, why don't one? Who wants? We can just do it alphabetically. Anandita, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Anna or Anandita. I'm a PhD candidate in computer science at the University of Washington. Yeah, happy to be here.
Alicia, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Alicia. I'm a software engineer at Microsoft, which is why I'm in Seattle. Yeah, and I graduated from NYU in 2019. So Sana and I were actually in the same year. Yeah, and it's good to be back to chat with you guys.
Thank you so much. I don't know what happened to Duke's connection, but he left. I guess he'll join again. So Duc, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'm Duc Pham. I did my bachelor's at NYU, graduated in 2018, then did my master's, graduated in 2020, and now I'm a PhD student at Cornell, and I'm glad to be part of the panel.
Okay, great. Thank you. Prachi,
I'm sorry, you're at Cornell? Can I interrupt? You're at Cornell right now?
Yeah.
Ah, I see. Okay, cool.
Right now.
We're close by.
Prachi, do you want to go next?
Cool.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Prachi. I graduated from NYU Tandon this past May, so 2020. I'm currently working as a software engineer at JP Morgan in New York City, and I'm excited to be here.
Great. Duke is back, so I guess Sebastian can introduce himself,
Yep.
and then Duke can go.
Hey guys, I'm Sebastian. I graduated in 2016, and I've since been a PhD student at Cornell. Exactly. Also happy to be here.
Nice.
Great. Duke, do you want to go now?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, the system wasn't working for some reason. Hi, I'm Duke. I graduated in December 2019, and I am now a software engineer at Facebook/Instagram. And nice to meet all of you.
Great. I guess Yash is the other e-board member here, so he can also introduce himself.
Hi everyone, I'm Yash and I study CS and economics at NYU CAS, and I would really like to thank everyone for taking time off their busy schedules and everyone also who's attending here as an ACM member for the first time. So thank you everyone for being here. I'm really excited to get to know all of you better.
Great. So I guess I can start off with like a question, and then, you know, as and when people have questions, feel free to type them in the chat box or raise your hand if you want to. Also, feel free to turn your like videos on. If you don't want to, that's fine. But you know, I want this to be like semi-formal, informal setting. So please don't feel shy to turn your video on. Great. So I guess my first question to like all of you would just be, it seems like a lot of you are, you know, across the industry, and some of you are doing your PhDs, some of you went to grad school, and then some of you are working as software engineers at like really prestigious companies. So how, like when you were in college, like how did you know whether you wanted to go to grad school or not, or whether you wanted to do a job, or if you're currently working, do you have future plans for going to grad school or something like that? So I guess we can just go alphabetically, or if one of you wants to speak first, feel free to just talk.
If we're going alphabetically, I guess I can start. So like I said, I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Washington now, and I should have said before that I graduated in December 2018. And how I decided that I wanted to go to grad school was, so I didn't go directly. I'm only a first year this year, so I started in the fall. But for the past year, I worked at MIT, so I was also doing researchy stuff. But basically, I tried out being a software engineer. Sophomore year, I worked at Credit Suisse. I worked in their algorithmic trading division, and I was doing like some software dev and like some AI related work in industry. And I just like did not like it at all in comparison to how much I liked my research. So like I was already doing research at NYU, and I found that so fulfilling. So basically, I would just say try both and see what you like.
That's great advice. Alicia, do you want to say something?
Sure, yeah. So similar to Anna, actually, I also did internships. So just to give some context, I actually came in as a physics major. I didn't actually come in as a CS major initially. I did want to do research, but midway through my first year, actually, my freshman year, I decided I really enjoyed building stuff. I did a couple of internships. I worked at Cruise, which was it's a self-driving car company in the Bay Area. And I really enjoyed just like building stuff, like shipping things, delivering products. I think it was almost like it gave me an adrenaline rush to be able to like meet deadlines, ship stuff, and I realized that's what I enjoy doing. So I decided that I would probably enjoy it more coming back into the industry and doing something similar. And I do enjoy it now, especially given the scale at which you get to work when you work for, companies that cater to so many customers. That's something I really enjoy. And I even during my internships, I like seeing the impact of what I had shipped. I like seeing how it affected people. And yeah, that's what drove me to actually come back and work in the industry.
That's great. Good to know. Yeah, I think I definitely understand that part about having that adrenaline rush, getting to like meet deadlines and being rewarded for it. So yeah, that's great. Duke, do you want to go next? I know you interned like every single summer while you were still like a student. So did you know like from the very beginning that this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, so I think I also came into school thinking about, like, should I go get a job or should I go get a PhD? Because I did something called competitive programming in high school. And if you don't know, it's pretty much like you learn algorithms and it's very theoretical. So even though you're coding, but then you're learning the math behind it, and you're learning how to write code for algorithms and all that stuff. And so freshman year, I was lucky enough to receive 2 offers. One to intern at a very old company called Yahoo, and one to be a researcher at NYU for the summer. And I think it was really a tough decision for me. I ended up going to the internship and I liked it. And then I got the offer from Facebook the following year, and I decided that that's going to be my path. And I'm going to be super honest with you guys. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. One of the reasons I chose the offer of Yahoo over the researching was like money. It's working in the industry at this moment, at least for now, probably has you have a higher chance of being more financially stable than pursuing PhD or researching. But yeah, I also took a researching class in sophomore year, and that's when I really decided that I don't think this is for me, because even though I like to read a lot about algorithms and all that stuff, I feel like the cool things I wanted to do, like machine learning and AI and computer vision, was too much math for me. So yeah, I definitely agree that even if you think you've chosen one path, even if you have an internship or you have a project that you're building stuff, it never hurts to join some research class or some research like projects, or just reading up on something that you want to know more. So if you're interested in computer vision, for example, just read up on a few papers, a few classical like papers on that topic, and see if that's something you follow, and see if that's something you want to learn more about. And that's the only way that you would know for sure.
Great. Thank you so much for that insight, I guess. Yeah, so it seems like you knew very early on what you were going to do. So, that obviously has worked well for you. So that's great to hear. Kyokto, do you want to go next as to how you decided, if you knew from the beginning?
Yeah, I had somewhat of a unconventional path. So I started my major as an economics person, and all my internships were in like economic development or NGOs and stuff like that. I think last year of my undergrad, I realized I want to do research. And then once I figured out a research topic I like, I just went with it. I think like that's the one thing I can recommend. Like if you are gonna do a PhD, make sure that you're like not committed to a topic, but you like the idea of research a lot and have fun doing it. I guess I'll push back a little on this money point from before. Yes, so once you start the industry, you're gonna have a lot of money on your hands eventually somehow, but it's gonna make it harder to go to a PhD. So I would say consider these 2 points when making a decision. Yeah, that's I think the path I got to, and then I worked towards research and did a master's because I was a little late on stuff, and then I went to
Did you just out of curiosity, did you ever have like a software engineering internship also to
yeah, I had like 2. I realized I like building like hacky research projects over software that actual people are going to use, I guess.
Well, that's very different, I guess, from what Alicia mentioned earlier. So yeah, good to know. Yeah. Prachi, do you want to go next?
Sure. I think for me, like once I got into like college and everything, I was kind of eager to like finish everything up and just see like how I can actually apply coding to real life, because I've just been like taking hard classes and I was like, I just want to see like what this actually does. And I think similar to like Alicia, I like the satisfaction of like producing something for a client and then seeing them enjoy it and like getting that whole like satisfaction. So I think for me, I kind of always knew that I wanted to start off like in the industry first. And like both of my siblings as well are like software engineers. And like I kind of just went in their path, I guess, which is just the way for me how it worked. But I do like have plans to get my master's though, like probably a year or 2 into like working. I want to work and then also get my master's at the same time, because I do feel like it's important to keep learning as well as like on your job. But yeah, I think I just always wanted to just understand how I can apply everything I've learned in real life and see like how it actually works for everyone. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, definitely. I understand your and Alicia's sentiment, I guess. But yeah, definitely. That's great to hear. How about you, Sebastian? You're the last one to go. Sorry, you have to wait.
Before, could I interrupt real quick? Sorry.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So
yeah.
when I mentioned that once you start going into industry, it's harder to go into a PhD, someone was messaging me. It's not that like going into industry hurts you, but I just want to make it clear to everyone else that some people, once they see money, they like, because the grad school doesn't pay you as much, and then you're less motivated to go into a PhD. Yeah.
So I'm going to touch, I guess, on the first point that I think everyone mentioned so far, which is try out things, right? It's very, very important to take an internship while you're doing your undergrad and see if you like it in the industry, gather, an experience, or do a research internship at NYU, which is what I did. And then you get a feel for it. And not only do you get a feel for it, but also you make your case later on in an application towards a company or graduate school much, much stronger. And this is extremely important. Regarding, I guess, this one point as well that you just mentioned, doing internships in industry makes it harder to get a PhD position. It's not that industry hurts you. Again, I'm going to second that. The lack of research experience hurts you. So if you can do something that is kind of novel, right, in the industry, do research there, maybe be a co-author of a paper, no one cares. But it's important, if you want a research position, that you do demonstrate that you are interested and that you have done research successfully. Yeah, and then, okay, the last thing I mentioned is kind of this trade-off, right, that we're all talking about right now is industry has its benefits. And I want to also make a case for academia, because I'm here, which is, sure, you earn less money. However, there's also a separate lifestyle choice, I think, that I see, which is that my day, for example, is completely self-determined. I don't have a boss looking over my shoulder telling me what to do. I wake up in the morning and I decide what I want to get done, and I do that. And that's very important to me, which is why I chose this path. I kind of have the freedom to really live my own day the way I want to live it. But of course, there's so many great things you can do in industry with so many more resources. You can touch so many people's lives. Yeah.
I guess I would add to that by saying that, like, if you decide to pursue a more researchy path, let's say in undergrad, and you're doing more research internships, or you do REUs over the summer, or you have research work lined up and you're not doing these software engineering internships, it's not a necessity that after your PhD, like, you do go to academia. I mean, of course, like, so many of us that are here, like, do plan to go into academia, but like here as in a PhD, like, plan to go into academia. But I feel like there's so much room for you to get a PhD and then work in industry, like meeting those deadlines and doing those things, but just from a research standpoint rather than from a software engineering standpoint, or rather from a product standpoint. So, I mean, really what you do with whether you want to do research or whether you want to, you know, do engineering type roles or, you know, go directly into industry, I mean, it's up to you sort of where you decide to apply that in the end.
Exactly. At the end of the day, do what you want to do.
Sure. That's great to know. Yeah, I understand that sort of like wanting to not have someone look over you. I guess that would be true also if one was deciding to start their own business, but we don't have any entrepreneurs with us today, unfortunately. But yeah, thank you. That was all like really great advice. Yash, do you want to maybe ask a question?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to address a question in the chat, and definitely we'll be getting to that part of this meeting soon when we talk about how to secure interviews and positions at these firms. But let's talk about I would really appreciate it if the panel could share what the structure of their day is like. So how do you spend your days, and even both in industry and in how the PhD candidates usually structure their day and what work do they do during the week. That would be really helpful in you know, gaining perspective on how actually the lives are lived. So yeah, good. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yes, Anandita can go first.
Sure. I think so. There are two other people that are PhD candidates in this panel, so I'll let them take what does a PhD candidate do in a day sort of thing. But I guess like the unique experience I can share is, so for the last year I worked at MIT, and at MIT I was a research associate at the Lincoln Lab. And basically the Lincoln Lab is an FFRDC, or a federally funded research and development corporation. I don't know what the C stands for, but it's an FFRDC. And basically what I did there, it was a full-time role. I wasn't an intern, like I was a total, like I was something that they call a staff member. And I was doing research for my whole day. And it was sort of like developing products like Alicia and someone else in this panel said that they do. But yeah, so basically what I did there was the government would come to MIT with these large problems about defense or about, you know, like biological weapons or like all these other big things that the government cares about in terms of R&D. And they would say, hey, MIT, like build us a solution. Like, what do we do? What do we do if the Federal Aviation Agency has this sort of a problem? Or what do we do if, you know, there's a hurricane? Like, how do we predict hurricanes or blah, blah, blah. So basically what I did was this like unique combination of both industry and research. And I totally got paid exactly as I would have in industry. So there's an opportunity for people to make like a completely good wage being a researcher, is what I'll say. And yeah, so my day was basically like I was in industry. So I would talk to government sponsors. I would ask like, what do they want me to do? I'd come up with like a unique research-based solution, and maybe I would help in deployment, or maybe I would pass that off to the agency itself for it to be deployed. And then they'd come back and say, hey, like, we're not sure about the specificity of this, or we're not sure about this. Like, can you tweak some of this? And basically it was research-oriented roles. I wasn't developing any software. We would pass off our research prototypes to other companies like Booz Allen Hamilton or whoever else, like a different contractor, to actually implement those solutions. But the research or the ideas were ours. And like that was really unique. And like those days were, you know, a mix of industry and research. And
Yeah, it's good to know about your unique experience. And I guess about like the wage point that you mentioned, and you know, other people can bring it up later, I guess, just like, you know, how you were working in a very academic setting, but you were being paid as much as like some people in industry might be paid. I guess there's similar positions at companies like Microsoft or Google or Facebook too, right, where they do hire researchers who do research in an industrial setting. So, you know, if any of the panelists want to address that later on, that would be great. Alicia, do you want to go next as to like, yeah?
Yeah, sure. And before I think I mentioned what I do during the day, or like what my day looks like, I think I really want to emphasize what Anna just mentioned. So we, on a daily basis as a software engineer, I do work with people from MSR, which is Microsoft Research. They're PhDs, they're people who do research like as their day job. And again, there's no wage difference there. They're paid in the same way that, you know, an engineer would be paid. I do have people on my team who are engineers who've gotten PhDs. Actually, more than half my team has a PhD because we work in the machine learning domain. And there's a huge demand for PhDs in my team. So I just want to emphasize that again, like there's a lot of corporate research and a lot of corporate research opportunities available if that's what people are interested in. But going back to what I do on a daily basis, so my team is very autonomous in that regard. We sort of drive projects ourselves, and that's the expectation from us. So even from my partner engineering, partner group and group director level, the expectation is that whether you're an SD1, which is software engineer 1, or whether you're a principal engineer, you drive a project from design to test to deployment to production. And you ensure that it's delivered to customers, it's delivered in a proper manner, in a timely manner. So there's a lot of autonomy. So my day is basically the way I design it, what I want to do in a particular day. There are a couple of projects that on a typical day I'm working on. So for a couple of months, I was working on how we can route queries in the most optimal way from the user to the nearest data center. How do you optimize that? The other thing I've been working on is how do you encrypt user data that is in machine learning models in the most optimum way so that we can ensure privacy for our partners, we can ensure data compliance, regulations are met, because that's one of the value propositions of Microsoft, that we do believe in privacy, and we do protect the privacy of our customers, and that's top priority for us. Yeah, so each day is really different for me. There are weeks when I'm on call, which is what I mentioned to you last week, Oishika, that I'm on call this week. And those weeks I'll be working at weird hours. You'll get called in the middle of the night sometimes just because some system went down. And like 1 million users can't access their mailbox, so you got to get up and fix it. And you'll have days like that. You'll have days like, where I start working at 3 o'clock in the morning just because, I got a call in the middle of the night, and then I'm working until midnight the next day. But that's only when I'm on call. Those are the only crazy days I have. But other than that, it's a very typical working day. And I think one of the things is one of the things I want to point out is there's two parts to the job. One is actually building the product. The other is maintaining the system. And both are equally important, because as you build and ship new features, it's important that the system scales. And so there's a lot of focus, and a good part of our day also goes into ensuring that we maintain those systems and deal with what we call operations on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was very detailed, I guess, and thank you. It was really helpful to know for me to, like, that that's what like a day is like. Duke, do you want to go next as to how your day is like?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot, especially if you work in teams that are not that are more seasonal. So, for example, at Facebook, for example, there are a lot of teams that, um, like me, I work on IT shopping, but there are a number of different teams that they have ship goals. So, for example, the upcoming Thanksgiving slash Christmas and the holiday time would be super busy for our team because a lot of people will be shopping. Um, and if, for example, if you work on, for example, Facebook Live, then New Year's Eve and also the holiday season where people go home, they live stream a lot. And so the usage kind of spike in that, and your team has to, there is a potential for more bugs, for more troubles that comes up, that is more work. Um, Usually, I think um, for me, but usually that aside, it's pretty standard 10 to 6 days because I start my day a little bit later. Um, and I think in work, and as you will know this when you will learn this when you get a like an internship job or your first job, you can work harder, but it's advised for at least for working in the industry to separate your work and life, to have good working hours, to stop looking at the screen after 6 or before 10 or during your designated lunch break or weekends, unless you're on call, unless a few weeks where you have to fix like important bugs. And the reason for this is that, and I'm sure it's the same for if you go the other path to research, is that it's going to be a marathon and not a sprint. For an internship, maybe you can work a little bit harder because it's 12 weeks and then you're done. But then this would be the rest of your life, or until you're like 40, 50, 60, and you don't want to burn out. So think of it as a very long journey, and it's more important to preserve your peace of mind, your mental health, your physical health, than it is to get a few more, code reviews in, or a few more lines of code in. And so it's something that young engineers like really struggle with, and I struggle with when I was an intern. But yeah, just try to always manage your work-life like balance.
Thank you. Noted. That was like, very deep and insightful. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Gyokduk, do you want to go next? I know you just started with your PhD, so,
Yeah. As far as I understand, Sebastian, you're a more senior PhD student, right?
Yes, more senior than a year. Yes, in 4 years.
Like 4 or yeah. Okay, so like I guess you guys will get to like it's kind of a spectrum where your day kind of changes as you get more senior. Right now, my time's split between 3 things. I go to classes, and everyone's been to classes, so it's pretty straightforward. I teach. Most of the time, PhD programs require you to teach in some form to fund you. This will change as you progress and an advisor hopefully hires you and you don't have to do this anymore. And the third one is spending time research. So most of the time, like sometimes I'm thinking about problems, sometimes I'm reading papers. Last week I built like a piece of tool just as a prototype. That's kind of important in research. You kind of have to build fast, and it's not like industry where you actually rigorously build a nice tool, but it's also fun. And yeah, I think this is like the first year, basically how it goes. And most of the time you get to know people and you talk to people and try to find an advisor and settle into a topic. I would say that that's what's my like time has been so far. And I'd also like to add to one thing Sebastian said, where he said, like you have the freedom to do anything you want. When you do a PhD, in some way, your days are more free. This can be a curse or a blessing, depends on the type of person you are.
Yes,
but
okay.
There's also an advisor for either or of these situations. So if you want a hands-on advisor, you can pick someone that will always manage you, and that works out, or you can be more free. Yeah, so that's my day.
great. Good to know. Thank you so much, Gyokduk, for sharing. Prachi, I guess you're next.
Okay. So for me, it's a little like kind of different. I just started working actually the end of July. So it's been like 3 months almost now of me like working full time. And it all started online as well. So it's also really different. I didn't really meet any of my team yet. I don't know what they look like. That I mean, I've seen them on video, but not really like in person. So that's been strange. But I'd also say like my day is pretty standard, like a 9 to 5 kind of day. And I liked how Duke mentioned the difference between like work and life. Like I just started, so I've been actually struggling with that differentiation of like, okay, I need to log off at 5 or like 6 and just go live my life now, especially from working from home. So I think it's really important that you set those deadlines for yourself and you log off. You're just like, okay, I'm done. I worked the time I'm supposed to, and you just end the day. But a little bit more about my day specifically, like the team I work on, we work on like I can't describe it that much because it's like secret stuff for the firm. But I basically work an application that a lot of like the salespeople use for JP Morgan, like the traders and all of that. So it's a little bit more like interaction with the clients. So my team is like all software engineers. A lot of them are older than me because I just joined, but so there's a lot of conversation with the actual salespeople. So I have a lot of meetings with them. I also have like business analysts that we also speak to who kind of set up the tasks that we need to work with. So they speak with the salespeople, they write up a whole thing, and then we go over it with them and we figure out, okay, how hard is this going to be? What do we need to do? And it's also been like a lot of guidance because I haven't met my team yet. So there's a lot of like Zoom meetings and like asking your team questions. And one thing like I just want to push for is like once you like go into full time or even when you intern, it's like don't be afraid to ask questions throughout the day. Like I always feel a little bit embarrassed to ask questions sometimes, but you really should always ask your team questions whenever you feel lost or if you just don't know what's going on or for anything, even if it's like the silliest thing in the world, you should ask questions because that just really helps the day go by faster and gets your tasks done. You should also not feel too overwhelmed when you like first start coding, like as a full-time like engineer. They know that you're new. Take your time, learn like what you're doing. But yeah, overall, it's just like a 9 to 5 day, pretty steady. My manager's like, I feel like a lot with working from home, a lot of managers are flexible where you can like take breaks more often, have a more flexible like lunchtime, or if you need to step out, so you can change your hours a little bit more. But yeah.
Okay, that's yeah, I guess you just joined. I knew that. So yeah, thank you so much, Prachi, for sharing. Prachi and I were actually TAs for the same course. She was like the head TA, and I was the TA. That's how I know her. So yeah. Sebastian, do you want to go next? Oh, and also I have just a question for you. I know you directly went into a PhD like right after undergrad. I know Anandita worked for 2 years and Gyokta did his master's, but you just, went straight into it. So like how, I guess like, you were that bold enough to just like make that decision?
Not, I mean, I wouldn't call it bored. I just, I knew I really liked research. I had spent the summer before at NYU with my advisor, or was it actually 2 years? Might be 2 years, the summer, 2 summers before graduating. And then I continued working for 1 more year with that advisor and then 1 more year with another one. And I just loved it. I loved the, being able to do research on my own, coming up with things. It has its ups and downs. Yeah, and let me connect this also to the previous question. So how do I spend my days, right? And initially, maybe going back also to Goktuk, when you start a PhD, you have still somewhat, let's say 50% of the responsibilities you had as an undergraduate student for maybe a year. So you take 2 classes a semester, probably, though they require much less class work. So it's really, you can't compare it with an undergraduate degree where most of what you do is take classes. So if you're sick of taking classes after your 4th year of your undergrad, that shouldn't be a reason not to go into a graduate program, because that's not what it's going to be like. Sorry, this is, okay. How do I make this stop? Do you hear the messages? Okay, there we go. Where was I? Right, similarly, if you do like classes, that won't make you a good researcher, which is also something to consider. But then as you progress in your PhD, your daily life more and more becomes that of a complete researcher, just 100%. So, you know, the past year, probably I didn't really take a class. You know, I listened into classes, but I didn't take a class. And there's several stages to each research project. And I'm lucky enough, like Anna, to also be involved in applied research, but also in theoretical research at the same time. So there's a project we have with Toyota, the Toyota Research Institute, and also a MURI, which is like a military grant. And for them, we're building Sarah, the scientific autonomous reasoning agent, which is a robot, pretty cool, has a laser, and it shoots at materials to heat them up and make new materials with potentially, you know, unknown properties. And we're writing and developing code for an active learning procedure. So how do you discover autonomously without human intervention? How do you discover a new material with certain properties? So for Toyota, for example, there could be a catalyst for a car that makes the air breathable. It could be batteries for electric cars, or solar light absorbers. Exactly. At the same time then, I also do, which is currently due to the pandemic, where most of the applied research has gone down, I'm also doing theoretical research. And there, you know, there could be weeks where the only thing I do is math. And this is because I want to do math. I don't need to do the math, but I can decide to do that. And then, you know, once you get the math down, you might do an implementation of your project, and then you write a paper, which is what I'm currently doing. So currently I wake up and all I do is experiments and writing a paper. So it's quite varied, but the one kind of prevailing factor here is that I'm completely self-determined. So I decide when or what paper to write. I decide what project to do whenever I want to do it. So I took Friday off. I worked Saturday and Sunday. That's, you know, whoever likes that, that's really nice. But yeah, you can also have a very different experience depending on your advisor, which is, okay, I'm going to finish on this point. A very important point is that just because I say, you know, there's a lot of freedom in a PhD doesn't mean that that's everyone's experience, because the single most important factor in your PhD will be your advisor. It's going to be one person. It's not the name of the university. It's not the ranking, you know, top 10, top 20, doesn't matter. It's this one person. And that's terrifying because you don't know that person a priori, right? But you should at least make an effort to find someone that you could imagine working with, right? And you'll talk to them and you will build a relationship. But this is truly, if you want to go into research, the number one most important thing to do.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was good to know. And the robot stuff sounds really cool, like with the laser and everything.
It's fun, yeah.
It sure
it's
does
like Terminator. Well, hopefully not, but.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. I guess just like everyone who's attending, if you have questions, feel free to like raise your hand or type it in the chat box as and when like we're progressing. I'm just talking because no one else is asking questions. So, you know, feel free to type in the chat box. So I guess another question, which like, you know, for the people who are working in the industry, it did seem like that, yes, while you do have like a boss, there's also like freedom to still like choose like which like how much you want to work. Like, you know, Prachi and Duke mentioned you have like a 9-to-5 structured day. So do you also get to like choose the team that you want to work on? Like, I know with like the PhD candidates, you sort of are supposed to have an idea of like what you want to do your PhD in or something, you know, like that. So, or maybe you don't, I don't know. So, you know, I guess that's a question to y'all too. Like for the ones who are pursuing a PhD, did you know from the very beginning which topic you were going to do the PhD on? Or like, how do you explore the different topics? Or how do you know what you're interested in? And as far as like the people who are working in the industry, I'm like really curious as to know if, because you know, Alicia said she mentioned that she was working in the machine learning, like she works in sort of this intersection between machine learning and then product development. Prachi, you mentioned that it's super secret stuff, I guess, so you can't talk about it. But how do you get to like choose what you want to work on or which team you're working on? So yeah, I guess Anandita can go first.
Sure. So right now, what I study is basically how machine learning and vision can help us better healthcare for people. And I like how I came upon studying this is basically like, as I said, I joined a lab like as a freshman, and for people that are younger in their career, like where you're really thinking like, I have no idea what any of this stuff means. Like, how do I know if I like software engineering research? Like, again, just try it. Like, I was in a computational biology lab freshman year, and I had done some research before that and whatever, but it wasn't really anything real. And I came into that computational biology lab where I was a math major, and I was like, woohoo, computation, like this is the coolest thing ever. And then like I realized like so many of these people that work in industry now, like I really want to do something that has to do with people. And like I can't, like me personally, like I can't do math like forever. Like before I was like, I'll become an algebraic topologist and like that's it. Like that's where that's the end goal or whatever. But like I tried computational biology. I liked the fact that it like had something to do with cancer. It had something to do with people, but it was too far away. And so to me, what I do now, or like what I did like in undergrad, like over summers, like one of the summers I like helped develop an app where if you scan your arm or or if you scan your leg, like and if you have a mole on your leg, like we can see, or like we can make an educated guess as to whether that mole is cancerous or not cancerous. So to me, that's like way closer to people. And like, that was like something that really drove like the direction of what research I wanted to do. So yeah, basically like what matters to you will like transpire in what you end up ultimately picking. And yeah, again, just like try out a couple of things, and if you're a freshman, if you really don't know, or like if you're a sophomore and really don't know, or a junior and really don't know, then it's totally okay to just, you know, be like, okay, I just want to like with some random professor, just be like, oh, I want to work with you for a couple of weeks, or I like read some of your papers and I'm interested in this, like, can I like do this particular thing? And just reading and sort of exposing yourself will teach you what you like and don't like, I guess.
I see. Yeah, definitely. I totally resonate with that part where you said you thought you would be an algebraic topologist. That's what I thought I'd do. Like I'll take analysis, vector analysis, differential geometry, every possible math class. And then I took honors analysis and I decided to not take any of them. So yeah, I definitely understand that sentiment, I guess. So there was like a question in the chat, which I think you can address while like, you know, you're still talking, which is that from the PhD candidates, do you guys have any tips for vetting potential advisors? How can you tell if someone might be a good advisor or not? And then how do you go about choosing your research topics or area of interest, which I think Anandita did speak about, and Gyoktak and Sebastian can address it later when they're talking. So yeah, how do you find like an advisor?
I think, like, to be totally honest with you, like finding an advisor, like Sebastian said, is like this is like one of the most important relationships you'll have over this 5-year period, and it really should be someone that you just get along with from the start. And like, so basically I interviewed at a lot of schools and like all this stuff, and I can recollect like one school that I interviewed with. It was a really good school. I was really excited about going there. I felt like the research fit was really there. And the guy was looking at my application, like he looked down to look at my application, and it was obviously a Zoom call, and he was just like, hi, and he like sort of trailed off. And he was like, oh, what research do you do, blah, blah, blah. And like, I immediately knew from him, like just not asking me how to say my name, or like just not being like, you know, like how, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like it's like a friend. Like you want them to be nice to you. You want them to care about you. You want them to like have your best interests at heart. And like, whether it clicks or not, you should generally be able to tell from conversation. Like you and your best friend like probably met and you did something cool, you had shared interests, you like doing the same things. I mean, that's how like a research advisor should be, albeit like not as casual. But I really think like, you know, if it fits and you know if it doesn't fit too. And there's obviously opportunity for it to like you to change your advisor if it doesn't work out. So I wouldn't be too worried about that, but you should definitely be able to tell if it's a good fit or not.
Yeah, that was you know, the thing about you meeting someone and then realizing right there that they would not be a good fit. Thank you. That was like a very,
I'm just
I
gonna
guess, yeah.
jump in
Sure.
and just also add to that. And I think, yeah, I fully agree. I guess, as you also already said, Anna, you know, you should have a very good and friendly relationship with your advisor, but they're not going to be completely a friend, right? I mean, it can be very friendly, but also they're still in a position, you know, they're advising you on something. That said, though, you know, I have a very, very good relationship, very friendly relationship with my advisor. And one other tip I would like to add is when you find someone online whose research you like, right? So this is step number one. Once you've found someone compatibility with research, you can also reach out to their students. You can reach out to them, right? You can have a Skype call, a Zoom call, but also very importantly, you can talk to the students that are currently studying with that person. And then you usually really get the inside rundown of how things are going. Exactly. So I think this is very good, very, very important to do.
Right. So Sebastian, since you were just, you know, sharing your advice, would you also like to like address the question as to like how you went about finding a potential advisor or choosing like a research topic?
Sure. There are people who come into the PhD program already knowing exactly who they want to work with, which wasn't the case for me. I knew there were a couple of people here at Cornell that did very interesting work, but I didn't know exactly where I was going to fit. And that had to do primarily with the fact that I had already done research and I had the choice of continuing the same type of research that I did in undergrad, but I didn't just blindly want to follow those tracks that I was already set on. So for the first year, I did research projects, little ones, with 3 professors. And at the end, then found a really compatible advisor with really amazing projects that I then ended up choosing. Yes. So it was a process. It wasn't directly from the Zoom call, right? But I already knew coming here that there would be a couple of people that did really good research. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much for Gyoktuk, you know, now that we're on the same vein about like research and stuff, I guess you could end this segment, I guess, with how you found your potential advisor.
Yeah. First, I'll add on to like how you figure out who you want to, well, when you talk to an advisor. So all those like the advice so far leading up to like the application process, I think is good. Once you get admitted and you have a visit day, you should talk to your advisor, like the people you want to work with. You need to ask them like some very direct questions and don't be shy. Are you taking new students? Like how big do you think your group is? And these questions, like you need to figure out what your preferences are and what their preferences are. And there's no shame in that. And it's, I think, a good idea to ask them. The other thing is talk to their students, but also talk to all the other students and just ask them like, what do you think of X? And I think that's okay. Most PhD students are glad to help. At least they were with me. Yeah, that's my advice on that. What were the other questions? I guess my research interests and
Yeah, how did you find
how did I find my advisor? Oh yeah, I actually met my advisor like a summer ago. Cornell organizes this summer research school. It's called CMMRS. I encourage anyone who's interested in research. You don't even have to have too much experience. It's mainly for recruiting students and helping them get involved in research. So I met my advisor there, applied to Cornell, and kind of worked out. Yeah. And the other thing is, I guess you can always rotate. So at Cornell, generally the rule or the advice is one semester you work with someone, another semester you work with someone else, and then you try to figure out who you'd actually like to work with.
Great, thank you so much. I guess that I hope that answers some of like the questions that were addressed in the chat. As for like people working in the industry, I guess Duke, you can go first. do you get to choose like which specific team that you want to work on? And did you know which team you wanted to work on?
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna answer that, and also I see some other questions in the chat about advices in getting a job and all that. So I'll try to answer all of them, but be quick. So yeah, of course, it depends. For the first question, or you get to choose the team you're working on or the project you're working on. It depends on your company, depends on your team as well. So I know, for example, Facebook has this program called Bootcamp that when you join as an engineer, you have 8 to 12 weeks where you can try a bunch of different teams, and then you can choose a team based on your interests and how you feel you will get on with the people of that team. I know some other companies do something like this as well, like Bloomberg. I know there are companies that are a bit in between. For example, like Google, when you pass their first interview round, there's something called host matching, where the teams will reach out to you and talk to you and interview you. And then you may have more than one team where you can choose a team you'll be working on. And also, of course, there are companies that are way more limited. For example, for Microsoft, where I also interviewed, is that they're just one team will reach out to you and say, "Hey, we're interviewing for you for this role, and that's the only option you have." And I think it's also kind of the same with Apple, but don't quote me on that. But in general, I have to say, both in terms of teams and projects, you have some options. You have the option to talk to your manager. You have the option to talk to your company about teams and location. But obviously, you won't have the freedom of, say, going to a PhD program or doing your own like research, because at the end of the day, the company has a business need to get something done, and as an employee, it's your job to fulfill that business need of the company. And sometimes the business needs there aren't many options in that, and that's something you have to understand like coming in. Also, um, I see some questions on, do you need to know anything before going to your first internship, or how do you get jobs in internship? And something I tell um, people all the time, I think the most important that you would want to hear is that, yeah, there are things like lead coding and making sure you practice on your communication for job interviews and get to know people. But I think the most important thing, if you're at the stage where you're saying, okay, how do I get my first job, or what would the first job look like, is to, and I know it sounds cliche, but is to not be afraid. um, and I'll tell you the story of my first internship, two parts of it. The way I got my first internship was I finished a class freshman year, 1:50 p.m. I went down the stairs. There was this booth of Yahoo. The company is there, and they're checking resumes. And I had two options. One is to get lunch, and two is to try to print my resume in 10 minutes and come back and give it to them. And I almost chose lunch because at first I didn't think I was able to get it. And second, I was like lazy. It was like 10 minutes. I have to rush to get this done. But I ended up going to the library and printing out my resume and putting it in. Didn't hear from them for about 2-3 months, and then they reached out, and then we kind of had some interviews and get it. So obviously, don't take on more than you can take on. Like, don't take every opportunity that comes your way, because you need to balance your life out a bit. But also, don't be afraid of saying yes, of knocking on the door, of asking for things for yourself, of being confident and say, I think I have a shot at this. And the second thing about what I wanted to know before I got into my first internship was that, yeah, it's, again, don't be afraid. The first time, if you're a freshman or sophomore and you don't have much experience before, it will be overwhelming to look at an actual code base, because we're talking about thousands and thousands of files, thousands and thousands of functions and dependencies, and you're looking at it, and sometimes you don't know where to start, and it gets scary. And that was my first 2 weeks at my first job, and all I did before was writing, one program or maybe 2 or 3 files, and running it, and as long as it looks good, and it looks good. But then now I'm looking at like a repo of like thousands of files, and I don't know where to start. But there are mentors that companies put in place to help you through that. And you always have to tell yourself that you are there for a reason. The company saw something in you, somebody interviewed you and think you passed the interview, you're on the same level as other candidates who also passed the interviews. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to just sit down and duck through the code. Don't be afraid to tell yourself that you can do this. And that will help you immensely. Like even now, especially you will learn new things every day. And I think when you encounter a new thing, it's important to have that confidence in yourself that you can do it.
Great. Thank you so much. I really like that little story about you could either get lunch or give your resume, turn your resume in. But like, with the option, it's like Jasper Cane versus anything else. It's like, I'll choose anything else over Jasper Cane. But yeah, thank you so much, Duke. Alicia and I guess Alicia can go first, and then Prachi. Do you want to, Alicia take on? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so for me, so Microsoft is a little different in hiring. We have something called hiring events. So based on your resume, you're matched to a particular hiring event, which is for a particular org. Now, org is a very generic word. It basically means like a very, very high level division, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's for a particular team or it's for a particular specific group within the organization. So my hiring event was for the experiences and devices team. And so they will generally let you go through the interview loop and see whether you're a good fit for Microsoft in general, whether you have the basic technical skills. But once you pass that interviewing screen, then your resume will be passed around to different managers who are looking for people for their team, and they'll set you up with phone calls with a couple of managers. So I spoke to a couple of different teams before I joined, and this was not just like specific teams, but like partner engineering managers I spoke to. And they asked me like, okay, what is your preference now? What is the kind of team that you want to work for? And that's when I had the opportunity to talk to like a few people on the team. I had the opportunity to talk to like the manager, see what the kind of work is, the kind of projects that they're working on. And that's when I decided one specific team that I really liked. And even within that, what I learned after I joined Microsoft is that there's a lot of flexibility. Just because Microsoft is such a big company, say today, if I feel like I don't want to work, this is not what I want to do, this is not what I enjoy doing, there's always the flexibility to move internally. There's also the flexibility I can move from a software engineering role to a data science role. And that's something that Microsoft allows me. And it's just the ability to work on something you enjoy. That's basically what I've always been told, that if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to deliver your best. So if there's something you really want to work on, but it's not what you're working on right now, there's more options, there's more opportunities for you within Microsoft. And the other really cool thing that I discovered after I joined Microsoft is that we have something called internships, internal internships within Microsoft. So if I want to work for another team for say 3 months and check out like what they're working on or some of the projects that they're doing, that's an option I have as well. So I think in general, you do have the flexibility to pick what you're working on. Even if you're working within the same team, you can always propose projects, you can always propose improvements. There are some projects I'm working on today that I thought our team needed, and I wrote up a design doc, I shared it with my manager, and they're like, okay, we need this, let's go ahead and work on it. So it's really up to you how much initiative you take, and also how clearly you communicate with your team, your manager, that this is what I enjoy doing, this is what I'd like to work on. And they'll always make sure that there's enough room and opportunity for you to work on what you like to do. Yeah, so that's mostly with regards to being able to pick what you want to work on. And as for, I saw one question regarding advice for internships. I think I really liked what Duke mentioned about learning and asking questions. When interns come into our team, we don't expect them to really know very much. It's just like you're expected to have taken some classes, some CS classes, but there's not the expectation that you know everything or you'll know everything about the project you're working on. But the simple expectation is that you will be able to learn and you'll ask questions. and you'll deliver something and also enjoy the process. So yeah, so it's mostly about learning once you come in and asking a lot of questions.
Great, thank you so much. That was very helpful. Prachi, do you want to talk about, take on the question?
Sure. So for JP Morgan, for the way we get placed on teams and everything, I'm in something called SVP. So it's like the software engineer program. And basically like the interview process is like pretty standard. Like you have your technical interviews, you have your behavioral interview and all of that. And so they're all the same for everyone who's going to software engineering. And then after that, they give around a survey to everyone and you kind of get to put down your interests, the languages you like to use, how much you want to code during your like workday, 50%, 70%. And there's like a lot of different sectors and a lot of companies have many, many different sectors. You can like put down whatever you're interested in. I put down that I was interested in like the investment banking, which is why I ended up on a team that is like focused on investment banking. There's like various different things you can choose. And then based on that, there's like people that match you. So managers put in their like what they want, you put in your resume, and then you have a bunch of different calls with different managers and you figure out which team works for you. And then it's basically just like a mutual placement. If you like it and they like you, then you get to be on that team. And it's really flexible. If you don't like that team, you can switch and you can go anywhere else you want to. It's very flexible in that way. You can change internally whenever you want if you're not happy about it. So that's pretty good. Like it's pretty standard. Like as long as you express what you're interested in, they'll do their best to make sure you're on a team that you're doing everything that you want to do. And like, at least for me, that worked out really well. Like my team is exactly what I wanted to work on. So that was really nice. As for like the other questions about like internships and everything, I just want to echo like with Alicia and what Duc were saying about asking questions. Like imposter syndrome is like a very real thing. I suffer with it all the time. Like now that I just started my full-time job, like very much so, even then in my internship too, like it's a very real thing, but you need to just like remind yourself like you are very qualified. You went through all the interviews just like everyone else, just like what Duc was saying, like you've done everything. There's no need to compare yourself. Like you should ask questions, go heads on, like talk to people, like network with your manager, network with other like teams like that you work with. That's a big thing for like internships. You should really like talk to everyone and just get to know everyone, like learn more about the business side, learn like as much as you can. It's all about learning and just know that they don't expect you to be perfect at everything. Working in the industry is like so different than just doing a coding homework assignment. There's so much more that goes into it. Like there's a whole coding process, there's like testing, there's a lot more that goes into it. So it's just a lot about like soaking in information. And like to get an internship as well, I would just suggest like, just apply to as many places as you can. If you're really, really eager on getting an internship somewhere, just apply to as many places as you want to. Like rejection is a part of the process, but it just helps you. Like the more interviews you get to do, the better you get at the coding interviews. Because they are a little bit scary and overwhelming because it's like on the spot, but the more you do them, the better it goes. And like, I just really suggest like put yourself out there, apply to as many places as you want, just keep going for it and like really follow up with the recruiters as well. If you find someone's name, just like that you spoke to at a career fair, for example, or you get an email, follow up with them, stay connected with them, because then they'll remember your face. Like for JP Morgan, I really connected with the recruiter I spoke to at the career fair. Like I was about to not go to the stand, but then I decided to. And like, I really connected with her and like, she really like helped me get everything I wanted out of it. So I really suggest like, just talk to people, believe in yourself and like, just go after things, like try everything, put yourself out there. It's okay. Like rejection is part of it, but that doesn't mean you're not good at what you do. You just gotta go through it, but you'll get something. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I guess that's something everyone mentioned is just to like be brave and not to be afraid to like apply to places. Thank you so much. I guess we're nearing the end. So Yash, I'm just going to ask you, do you have anything to ask or add?
Yeah, well, I think to wrap up, I think the most important question that, everybody is thinking right now is, how to get competitive for both research positions or, for example, for PhD, and how to get competitive for the industry level experience. So if everyone could just focus on how they build their resumes and actually got those positions at the firms or the PhD opportunity research opportunities, that would be really great. So
Yeah, I guess like to add to that question, just something I'm curious about also is that I know sometimes being a competitive applicant is not exactly to do to do the things which would make you a competitive applicant is not at par with what you'd actually like to do. So if you're like in that situation, like how do you decide what you want to do? Anandita, do you want to go first?
Sure. So personally, I really think like, well, I guess actually I'll hold that thought. What I'll say about being competitive research is, like obviously everyone goes through all the classes and stuff, and like maybe someone, like for me, like my first research experience, I reached out to a professor like in my first week at NYU. Like I was like, I really like your work. I think that your way of solving problems is really cool, and I had read some of his work before, and he was just like, okay, let's talk. So one, it's like definitely taking initiative, like other people have said in the past, and two, like I would really say like what got me into the PhD program was my network. Like was every single professor that vouched for me, was every single boss that like put me down for like a new position or put me down for like a full-time hire or whatever else, and that gave me confidence, or people that just believed in me and gave me the opportunity to do stuff at MIT, or like take like gave me the reins. And really I think it's like you have to hone your like relationships with the people in the field to stand out, because everyone is like at par to a certain extent, right? Like you all take the same classes, everyone's taken data structures, whatever, when you're a sophomore, but like what gets you the internship is like, oh, that professor writing like that note, or you reaching out to someone and then someone else vouching for you or something like that. So I really think it's like it's a lot of people that back one person. And like Alicia said, like Alicia and I would sit and do homework for hours together and like really try our best to like be the best, or like put our best selves out there, even if it was for networks, which I didn't end up like doing anything related to networks. But then that professor Anirudh like wrote me a letter of recommendation to do blah blah blah. So I think it's just like really putting the work and the time in, and taking initiative and honing your relationship with other people. That's really what gives you the competitive edge. I mean, for anyone that's applied to PhD programs, like Goktuk said before, like you have a relationship with a professor and then you apply to that program, and there you have so much more odds of getting accepted. But obviously that doesn't mean that you need to have a relationship from like right now or something, but just reach out. I mean, reach out, offer to talk to people about their research, like ask intelligent questions, like just yeah, I think like my point stand, take initiative and like hone your relationships.
Great. Thank you. I guess we can go Gyoktuk and Sebastian and then move on to the industry panelists, I guess. So Gyoktuk, do you want to talk about what you think makes a competitive PhD applicant?
Yeah, I think like, if you Google this, every time you'll get the same list. The first starts with your personal statement, where you mention whatever work you're doing. The second is the recommenders, and then everything comes after. So I think like to be a competitive PhD applicant, you need like some sort of research project that you've done and you put in a significant amount of time, and then you should talk about it in the personal statement and explain why what you did was important or what you liked about it and so on. I think that's like really important, which I hadn't realized before applying to Cornell and other schools. And like, you don't have to stick to this research afterwards when you talk about it in your statement. It's just explaining research, and that's an important thing, like talking scientifically and so on. And the second is, I'll back up what Anna was saying and just like make connections, and you want people to recommend you. Like you have to work with someone, and then you need 2 other people to actually write you a nice letter. So you need to be active, talking to people, maybe take courses that have projects in them. So that's how I met one of my recommenders. So I took 2 courses with her, and she had both projects components where I did some mini research in some way. I think those 2 make mostly a competitive application. I mean, your grades, GRE, these are kind of, at least in my opinion, a little down the line compared to other things.
Great, thank you. Sebastian?
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I happen to be a good student at NYU, but I don't think, especially in retrospect, that was actually the reason at all why I got in here. And I think the most important reason, again, to recapitulate a little bit, it's interesting because I think we're saying the same thing, which I think makes the point that this is really the most important thing. is try to get research experience. And maybe I'm gonna kind of diffuse that a little bit and say, instead of research experience, because as an undergrad, very likely, right, you're not gonna do completely world-changing research. If you do, that's, you know, great for you. I didn't. I have to admit, I did research. I got research experience and I published a paper, but it hasn't changed the world. But what was important is that I showed and I was able to demonstrate that I wanted to do research, that I have gathered experience in it, and what Anna was saying also, that people around me, right, professors, knew that I wanted to do research and knew what I was doing and knew that I was passionate about it. Because at the end of the day, they're going to write your letters of recommendation. And if you want to be accepted to a PhD program, you have to convince the people in the program, the professors there, at least one, that they want to do research with you. They want to work with you, right? It's a two-way street. And just a GPA, just a good GPA doesn't want to make someone work with someone else. And I have a very good friend, I think this is an important anecdote, from my time at NYU, who had one of the worst GPAs of anyone I knew. Also, though, he was one of the smartest people I ever knew, right? And he got into a PhD program in economics at Yale, right? It's an incredible program for economics. But he was able to do that because throughout his time, literally from his freshman year to senior year, he continuously did research with professors in the economics department, and they vouched for him. And this is why he got in there. So I'm not telling you, don't focus on your classes, but I'm telling you that really, as Anna and Goktuk already said, the most important thing is research experience and getting to know the professors around you.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. I remember you said that to me too before about your friend. And I think when Goktuk and I were talking too, he did mention that grades are really not that important, but it's so hard to, drill that into my head. Right when you enter college, it's like you need to have like 0.9 or something. So yeah, thank you so much for saying that again. Alicia, do you want?
Can I add one last thing? Just to
Sure.
say, so some people were wondering about like applying straight out of undergrad versus waiting a little. I think we talked about this at some point. I would like to say, like, if you feel like you're ready for a PhD right after your undergrad, like Sebastian, I don't know if you applied right after, but you should really do that. And PhD programs in in Europe, it's a little different, but in the US, they actually want undergrads to apply immediately. And you will be somewhat flexible to change your topic. This is like another thing. If you're ready, just go ahead, in my opinion. Yeah, sorry for that.
And sorry, to add to that, I would just say, like, even if you're not like so sure, just apply. I mean, there's nothing wrong with applying. And then if you apply and if you get like 2 or 3 offers back, you can assess what offers you get back and then see whether those are things that you want to pursue, or maybe you decide, oh no, like I just want to go do this other thing for 2 or 3 years, or, go to industry for a little while and then come back, or try X, Y, or Z. I think there's nothing wrong with applying. And I know obviously it's like a time sink in terms of like doing it, but if you plan on eventually doing it, like laying the groundwork is going to help you in the end anyway. I personally only applied once, but I feel like I should have had the confidence to just apply straight out of undergrad. I really thought that I should wait and like do more stuff. And obviously being at MIT for 2 years really like strengthened my confidence, but like I could have applied out of undergrad. And I really think, like, to anyone who's thinking about it, just throw an application out there. It's okay. Like, just see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I feel more confident to apply now. Thank you so much. So Alicia, do you want to take over as to like what you think made you a competitive applicant for Microsoft Word, like your past internships, or maybe you took like hard classes? You took hard classes, and Nandita mentioned that, but yeah.
I took classes with Joanna, so they were great. No, just to go back to some of the I think some of the things that Anna, Sebastian, and Gokuk mentioned for PhD, I think they also apply to applying for internships. The first thing is that I want to again emphasize that your GPA is not the most important thing, as even companies are not really going to look at your GPA and say that, oh, you don't have a 4.0, we're not going to offer you an internship. That's not what they're going to say. They will. So when you apply for internships for your sophomore year or your freshman year, they will think about they won't necessarily think about like how much experience you have, but when you apply for your third year internship or when you apply for your full-time internship, they will look at the kind of experience you already have. And that may or may not just be software engineering experience. Even your research internships, things that you do outside of software engineering can also count towards making your application stand out. The other thing I do want to emphasize is that networking is again really important, just like has been mentioned before. It's as important for getting an internship as it is for, as people have mentioned that it is for PhD. One of the things I want to say is that a lot of my interviews I got through LinkedIn. So a lot of recruiters reached out through LinkedIn. Even my interview at Microsoft, actually, the recruiter reached out through LinkedIn. So it's really important to keep your LinkedIn profile updated. It's really important to ensure you reach out to different professors, different people, different recruiters. I think Prachi mentioned this in the past as well, that, apply to as many places, keep in touch with recruiters. And they are there, they're out there to try and help you get an internship. They're working for you, they're working with you. So just keep that in mind. Another thing that really helped me was conferences, especially if you're a female in tech. Grace Hopper is a great way to meet different people, to understand like what different companies are working on. It's also a platform where people get a lot of interviews once they, at the end of the internship, at the end of the conference. That's something that also helped me. I learned about different companies. That's what I learned about Cruise as well. So I would definitely encourage networking a lot, and through all the 3 channels that I mentioned. And finally, I think one thing I would like to emphasize, especially for people who are looking for full-time opportunities, is that the interview or the internship is as much for the company as it is for you. Figure out whether this is the company you really want to work for. Just because it has a big name or just because it has a large market cap doesn't mean it's necessarily the company for you. If you really like the culture of the company, if you really think you can work with these people, that is also what an internship is for. That is also what an interview is for. That's how I went into my interviews. I really liked the way I really liked the people I interviewed with at Microsoft. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to come back here. So I would say approach your internship search not just from the perspective of people are assessing you, but you're also assessing the company, and that's as important. Just because if you're going to be here for the long run, you have to be happy and you have to really like the culture of the place that you're working at.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Duc, do you want to, maybe take on the question about how you prepared? I guess you didn't have to prepare for interviews, did you? Because you were the coach for the poly programming team, but, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, so first of all, I'm sorry if my room seems dark. I usually don't have meetings in this hour, so the lighting, I never know. I look like a bad guy in movies. Like at the end of the movie, would be like, oh, this is a real bad guy, like all along, sitting in the dark, with a cat or something. Yeah. So nothing. So I think first I want to address the actual question first of how to be more competitive. So the first thing is what to put on your resume, and I want to echo all of the advice from people who have gone to the research route, just changing a bit. So and you've heard from from the advices above that the schools want to look at your resume and see that this is someone we want to do research with, this is someone we want to work with. The same applies for companies. Companies want to look at your resume and see, okay, this is someone who knows how to code, someone who can be productive for our business needs. And so if you're a freshman, if you're a sophomore where you don't have a previous work experience, or you're thinking about how to build your resume on that, then projects and class projects and any kind of projects, it's your friend, right? If you go to a class and there's a class project, maybe you don't need to take that too seriously, but if you can, then take it like seriously. Make a website, make a good UI, or make something where you can share. If you're in summer and you don't know what to do, come up with some okay idea for maybe an iOS app, an Android app, a web app, or just anything that you can put on your resume, and it will show that you know how to code, and it will hopefully land you that first interview that may lead to a job. Second point is to echo what people said before about like networking. Um, and networking doesn't have to be events and all that. So for example, and I'm just putting this out there as an example, but I'm also happy to do it. After this meeting, if you have my email, then you can just randomly send me an email saying, hey, I want to learn more about this process, I want to learn more about your company. I want to know what should I do in the next 2 or 3 years. And it's not just me, just anyone in this group or anyone outside of this group. The worst you will get is a no or a non-response. And I'll get to that like later. But at the end of the day, if you're respectful, if you're professional, then there should be nothing wrong with just trying to reach out and going to events, as people say. And on the point of preparing for interviews, lead code, that's what people have to do, or go to programming team when you learn to program, but also get a friend or maybe to yourself, try to um, be able to verbalize the code. You can also try to get a TA job. That's part of the job that you have to do this. But like, look at the piece of code, explain what's going on, and try to see if the listener is understanding it. Try to slow down or speed up based on that. And that will be also a super important skill in the interview. And I think all of that is summed up, and trying to go back to what all people have said. And I think there's a quote inside of Facebook that's used pretty often. Maybe Facebook didn't come up with it. Maybe we took it from somewhere else. I think I take to heart like every day. So there are a few reasons why you don't do something. The first is that you're lazy, and I don't know how to help you with that. That's something I'm lazy to work out. That's something I have to help myself. Or you want to balance things more, so you say, okay, maybe I'm working too hard on this part, I don't have space for this other effort. That's fine too. That's your call. But the third is, and I go back to my point before, is that you're afraid to send that email to someone new and say, hey, I want to learn more. You're afraid to apply for something because you don't think you'll be enough. You're afraid to go to this new club because you think everybody there is at a higher level and you'll be struggling too much. You're afraid to sign up for a hard class because you're afraid that will tank your GPA. And the quote inside Facebook is, what would you do if you weren't scared? Right? That's something you should ask yourself before you make like most choices in terms of your career. Am I not doing this because I'm scared, or am I not doing this because of some other reason? And if I wasn't scared, if I wasn't afraid, what would I do? Would I send this email? Would I apply to this job? And I think that that is the most important favor you can do yourself, is before you take any action, before you want to, if you're considering whether or not to apply to a PhD program, for example, as someone said before, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Do you not want to do it because you don't really like the researching, or you don't want to do it because you're afraid? And if you're not afraid, then go ahead, just apply to the program. The worst you can get is a no. So yeah, so advocate for yourself, and that's you're halfway there if you have the right mindset when it comes to it.
Great. Thank you so much, Duc, for, also addressing the, I guess, the mental part of it, mental health part of it also is like, just not be afraid, even if you've been rejected multiple times, because that's the worst it'll get, another rejection. Thank you so much for that. Prachi, do you want to talk about how you prepared for like interviews, or what do you think made you competitive?
Sure. I'll try not to talk too much because I feel bad this is extended a lot. But I guess for me, I would suggest, like, and kind of echo what other people have said, is just like kind of get involved and like take advantage of the different things that you're doing as soon as you like come in freshman year. One of the things that I did is like I reached out to the head of NYU Tandon's computer science department, and like we were like already on talking terms, and that really like helped me out throughout my whole like college experience. Like my first summer as a freshman, I was able to be a part of this like NYU based like program, and it's basically teaching like girls coding. for the summer, which is really, really fun. Like I was a freshman, so it was nice. And that was something I could put on my resume. And people love that because it's different. It's also really involved with STEM and like getting women involved in coding. And it was just a really great way. And that was just because I networked and I spoke to other people and I wasn't afraid to just go out there and talk to other people. So I really suggest to just like talk to your professors, talk to the department people. Like yes, they are your professors, but they want to talk to you. Like as a college student, like you are allowed to foster these relationships with them and get to know them better. And like, it really helps you get these different opportunities. Same with like me becoming a teaching assistant. It's because I spoke with Frankel and she like, which is the head of the CS department. And like, I was in connection with a lot of the professors I had freshman year. It really helped me become a TA and eventually become the head teaching assistant, which also really helped with like my application. Like people love that. And besides like coding things, I really suggest like, if you're passionate about other things, get involved with that too in campus and maybe get a leadership position there too, because that's awesome to talk about. It's a great way to showcase like how you deal with group settings, how you can be a leader as well. Because for like being a software engineer, like going into the like industry, it's important that you can code, but you should also be able to talk and work with your team. You need to be pleasant to work with other people. You need to know how to convey your ideas. And also if you're in a big meeting, you need to know how to like speak and like explain yourself like in a nice way. So like I was in a sorority at NYU and I took on leadership positions throughout the 4 years I was there. And that really helped me. And like in my interviews, they loved talking about that stuff. They liked how I was involved in different things on campus along with my coding stuff. So I say like get involved with coding, but also like get involved with other things that you are passionate about. They love just seeing that you are really involved and you're doing the most you can. And just as long as you speak with passion during your interviews too, they love seeing that. So I think that's what kind of helped me stand out, is that I just got involved right away. And like I got involved in other things, and anything that was on my resume, like I was committed to it for like my 4 years or 3 years I was in like college. And I guess for, what was the other part of the question? Was it like interviews? Okay. For interviews too, I suggest, like I think Duc also mentioned this, is just like maybe like coding with like a partner or a friend, and you guys can both like work on problems and work on like explaining the stuff to one another, because that is another big thing, is just like being able to explain your code, being able to like express that in a clear, concise way is really, really important. And like I said, like I think just like applying and like going to interviews, like it can be scary, but just like going, if whatever you get called back to, just going to the interview and actually going through that interview setting is the best practice. Like being in that actual setting, it just helps you get so much better. So if you start applying your freshman year and you start doing interviews, at least it really will help you year after year. So I suggest do that, and always just like follow up with the recruiters, do practices, make sure you're well versed like with your resume and you know everything on there is like something you can talk about in a good way, and like you know the languages, so they ask you questions about that. Just make sure you're comfortable with your resume. Nothing should be like a surprise to you. And just like, yeah, I suggest like practice with friends, do a bunch of coding practices, and yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Prachi, for that. Also, like this was very helpful to me too. And thank you everyone for coming. I feel like I told everyone in the email that it wouldn't be more than 1 hour, because I didn't know if I could convince any of you to come. So I said, oh, it's just gonna be 1 hour. So I'm sorry this dragged into like 1.5 hours. I hope it doesn't like it didn't take too much of your time. And thank you everyone who attended the meeting. I think pretty much everyone shared their like email address in the chat, or I guess, are you guys fine with people reaching out to you on LinkedIn, or would you just prefer? Is everyone good with that, or sure?
Likelihood that I'll respond is higher with email.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
So then
Hey, I thought of a final thing that I think will be useful for people that are applying to PhD programs. Sorry, I know that this is your like outro moment, but lots of I think like all of the top 10 schools for CS PhDs they do programs called, like the one at UW is called PARS, and I know Stanford does one. I'm not sure, maybe people at Cornell can speak to this, but basically you can submit your essay and your statement of purpose early to the school, and one of the PhD students will look over the essay for you and give you feedback. And also they, like lots of the schools like UW and Stanford both waive the application fee if you go through this program. So basically you have to submit your statement, if you've written one, by like November 10th, I think, for both schools, and then you'll get feedback and all that stuff, and your application fee will be waived. So like keep an eye out for like programs in general. like this, no matter what year you apply. I'm sure there'll be something for that'll like aid applicants.
Yeah, thank you so much. That really was helpful to know, and thank you for mentioning that. And thank you everyone for coming again. The email addresses for all the panelists are in the chat, but I guess I'll send out an email later also with like their details. So yeah, thank you. I guess you can keep in touch, and you know.
And thank you for organizing it. I think this is very good.
Oh
Yeah,
thank
thank you for organizing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get some
Thank
sleep.
you.
Oh, I have an exam tomorrow, so which I've not studied for at all. So no. But yeah, thank you and see you guys later, I guess.
Then
Bye.
best of luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone.